Wait a second, this ain't no game review. What are you doing? I don't know. Actually, I do. This is one of those rare occurrences when I actually do know. So, the gap between video recovered tapes can get long. So I figured I should upload something small that helps my brain a bit as well, because I feel like I get things done. I get to do something that's not nothing. Occasionally I will do so, and you might get different kinds of shorties every now and then. I'm still focused on games though, no worries. Also, I apologize for my voice, I'm actually hella sick right now. For this video, I assembled a playlist full of tracks that fit a certain theme, a vibe, a concept. Deep cuts, more mainstream ones, old and new alike, everything. My intention is to recommend some artists who I like a lot, especially considering how certain pieces on this list have actually been life-saving for me. Some of you might look at this list and know all the songs on it. I kinda expect you to do so, but I don't know how much of a music nerd audience I collected in the process of desperately trying to get internet validation. But I figured I will go normie on this one. It's an introduction after all. We're going slow and steady, starting with accessible stuff that's still good for the soul, or not. The theme for the first playlist is introspection. A drastic departure from what I usually do. But I just want to get you to think a bit, get to know yourself, learn about how you feel, hopefully without marinating in shitty brain stew. You know, dealing with your emotions. Real man shit, not like that toxic masculinity bullshit. I myself have been listening to many of these on and off throughout the last year or so, as I was struggling through a depression and anxiety haze, receiving medication, etc. And some of these have been comforting and just made either this period of time or another segment of my life easier to manage. Some recurring oldies, some more recent. I like to recommend more recent stuff, but there's gonna be old material in here as well, and I hope you'll find comfort in them as much as I have. Or if you just feel busy with your head, hopefully they will serve as a bit of colorful wallpaper or something. Also, when I'm like discussing a song's lyrical content, I think it's needless to say, but these are just my own interpretations on different pieces of art. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not. Feel free to go out of your way to tell me that I'm wrong, and make heads or tails of it yourself. Terribly underrated album and project in general. Blackwing is probably the most under-discussed, still ongoing musical endeavor of Dan Barrett compared to the Giles Coreys and Have a Nice Lives, both being incredibly cathartic and special for a reason, but Blackwing is a bit different, as Barrett focuses more on electronics compared to the post-punk shoegaze indie Arrowhead enthusiasms and the self-described apocalyptic folk. It's actually kind of fitting. Instead, lots of spacey and extremely catchy melodies are to be found on this one. The song I would like to recommend is off the latest album, No Moon, serving as the first single, and damn, Barrett's distant echoing voice just swims through the mix beautifully as a catchy spacey synth melody chimes in, each iteration of it slowly getting busier and busier, accompanied by echoey kicks that just punch through the sound soup, bucko. Lyrically, Barrett's focus often peaks inside, and this album is not an exception to the rule. In my head, this song is about not being able to work on ourselves for some reason, wasting the time we have that could have turned into something special, but it just disappears because we didn't take advantage of it. And it's also about how easily one can get lost in the cyclical nature of this process, growing in, feeling worse. It's great. I mean the way it's phrased and discussed, not the state itself. But even if you don't listen to the lyrics that are for my foreign ass kinda hard to make out, the melody itself juxtaposed to the lyrical content is... I picked this song because it is just beautifully comforting, really. There is something indescribable to that synth lead that grabs a hold of me. Heck, the comforting, warm beauty of it just makes me feel like I'm snuggled up under a blanket while staring out a window with a cup of hot chocolate. Which is kind of an odd way to describe a Dan Barrett album, but I'm fucking weird. It's probably the futuristic and yet nostalgic sound of it that just reinvigorates me on a night walk or wherever, really. As long as someone won't try to mug me while listening to it, it's great. In places where that could happen, listen to Street Sects instead.
Eris came to me at night and whispered in my ear, "You're getting boring. You're getting old." As she left, she placed a single golden apple at the foot of my bed.
I got to know Reckon Reference with this album, as I was late to the party. I love sample-based electronic music, and the duo's unique mix of genres and strange poetry were always fascinating to me. Even though I love them the most when they have a strong, screamy, industrially edge to their sound, with Want and No Youth being my favorite albums of theirs. That being said, Absolute Still Life has some of my favorite individual songs from the Reckon Reference catalog. The one in question, Eris Came to Me at Night, has a somber, dreamy tone to it in many ways. The poetry itself ventures into beautiful places with imagery that brings forth every moment I spend in bed not sleeping, thinking, waiting for freedom. Not in a traditional sense, but in a creative, boundless way that is really hard to describe. Hoping for my thoughts and being to become something more and better. Devouring a golden apple left by someone during the night, burying the seed below a dirty pillow, hoping for them to free what we have in our heads, while hopefully offering a way out of mundanity and disappointment. The song is an ode to dreams and aspirations, wanting to leave behind a life we don't wish to exist in and to live to our fullest and best. Also, I just realized when he describes how his existence will crumble and capsize, the beat becomes this busy, slightly chaotic menagerie of sound which returns to normal after realizing how dissatisfied he is, essentially tying into the lyrical content. The track is rather minimal, with a somber guitar melody and a head-bobbing catchy drum beat that is later accompanied by a soothing synth patch. I love this track. It gives me a bit of shove in the right direction when I'm alone with my thoughts at night. If you like the more poetic side of experimental shenanigans, give this a spin. And most importantly, let that seed under your pillow grow into something, okay? Don't just sleep on it for 30 years, and another 30 more, and feel horrible when you realize nothing has grown. Grow something out of that seed! Putting health on this list and no one can stop me, fucko. The Los Angeles-based trio, used to be a quartet, has been on a heavy rotation for a long while now. Their transition from noisy, twitchy punk music into electronic, poppy gothdom was quite a journey with many interesting steps. This song being one of them. A cover of a picture-playing cut bearing the same title. But listen. This is kind of embarrassing, but pretend you didn't catch me saying anything like this, okay? I'm just gonna chuck it in the air. It might be frightening. You might hear it, you might not, okay? Half version is better. Who the fuck said that? Who the fuck said that? There is a serene beauty to Jake Dujik's ghastly vocals and the healthified guitar licks that just improve on the original so much that it's kinda insane. It's a simple number with jittery vocal samples that are accompanied beautifully by Dujik. This song speaks to me in a strange way that's relatively hard to describe. It is able to unearth certain emotions in me that I often forget about, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's one of those came at the right time sort of instances, because it's not a track I would normally associate with mental health. I kind of feel like this one is just one of those where the circumstances made it special type deals. I've been having a lot of problems with getting the right medication, lots of stress from work-related issues and school and such, and I was walking away from a practice class I taught, which was fucking terrible. And as I was strutting about in the rain with this on, it sort of got me out of it. This song is special to me because listening to it in that specific moment made me realize that I made giant steps towards pulling my shit together. And even though I was horribly wet and grumpy, looking at some depressing ass decaying buildings next to my university, I couldn't help but smile. Since then I'm reminded of this emotion with every listen, which I'm grateful for to a huge extent.
Égi hajó éli, éli a jószik, úszik elő, árad elő földre, földre verő élet, életeső, itt az idő, ott az idő.
Tamás Kátai is the most interesting character in Hungarian contemporary music in my opinion. Like overall. One of the best projects coming out of Hungary is literally a one-man bedroom avant-garde metal project. I'm oversimplifying it of course. Kátai collaborates with a multitude of people to the point where a lot of fans think that we're talking about a fully formed band. He has such an incredible knack for production and composition that I just don't want to believe that most of the music he made was essentially born from, again, a bedroom studio. If you end up listening to a record or a song, you'll probably think the same. The man's music is so fucking good that 20 people were needed to cover a bunch of stuff all over his catalog at the Hungarian Fekete Festival. Translates to Black Noise Festival. It's a cool little dark music festival in a mountain range with dense forests and shit. Moody as hell, recommended. If you're in the region or something, like I don't know where you people are going. The song I picked is kinda low-key, but that won't stop me from loving it. I could have picked so many quality tracks from an overall outstanding discography, but I chose Hajó, which translates to ship or boat. When it comes to Kátai, he's responsible for the most beautiful pieces of Hungarian poetry I can think of, and this song is no exception. The ship in question is one sailing the sky, essentially the rain itself that feeds the life down on the ground, resulting in life prospering, blooming. It's about the scale and amount of life in the cosmos and how human nature itself craves and wishes to exist in it for longer and longer. We want to prosper and bloom in the burning summer and in the flood of lives as well. It's this wishful approach towards eternal life that defined humanity throughout its existence, but the way he delivers this not only showcases how insignificant we are, but he does so in a way that doesn't feel discomforting. It's actually pretty astonishing and interesting. The instrumental is mysterious and spacey with atmospheric synth work and the occasional strings between short verses, offering a beautiful canvas for Kátai to paint similarly beautiful pictures. Through poetry. If you're going to listen to an entire album that's connected to any of these songs, let it be Geometria by Thy Catafalque. From jazz to black metal and Hungarian folkisms, there is something here for everyone. Don't let the black metal side of things scare you, by the way. It's not an album that's just like some skinny white dude in corpse paint cawing into a toy mic. It's actually pretty tight and well produced. It's atmospheric and unique, and you should definitely check it out. Travis Miller is an elusive genius. With numerous monikers behind him, he left a gigantic library of releases throughout the last, 15 years or so. Most of his success, however, is related to two projects, Lil Ugly Mane and Bedwetter, with the former starting out as a love letter to southern hip-hop legends like Gravediggaz or 3-6 Mafia. His breakout tape was Mr. Thug Isolation that utilized a hella freaky southern hip-hop and an experimental noisy approach to instrumentals and production, with Miller pitching his voice down, turning his freaky violent lyrics into devilish chants that were just often hilarious, with songs like Bitch I'm Lugubrious. The project, however, slowly became more experimental, darker, shifting towards a struggling Miller whose focus on nihilistic philosophy and mental decline on later releases made for uncomfortable and strange listening experiences, while still being somewhat relatable to me. His then final record, he just put out a new album out of nowhere at the time of writing this, the man disappeared for years and then put out a cassette, then put out a banger black metal demo, and now he just put out a fucking full length. His then final record, Oblivion Access, paved the way for his deeply personal Bedwetter moniker, and the first release connected to it, which is a harrowing portrayal of mental health struggles and dissatisfaction with a system that didn't offer him care simply because his case is not extreme enough, at least for them. I feel like I needed to tell you all this for context because Miller put out a cassette release last year under the Bedwetter alias that's quite the departure from his I don't know, noise-fucked, humorous, murderous raps, and also the cloudy, self-reflective songs that branch into emotional breakdowns as well. Headboard is a lo-fi guitar-driven number. It's simple, really simple, with cloud rap influenced synths singing to themselves over thick and warm guitars that just fill up the whole thing. It's far from the most complex and ambitious thing he ever released, but I feel like it shows Miller in a state that's just a bit more safe and comfy compared to this.
If I was glass, I'd revert back to sand. Scattered through the sea, I could pass through your hands. None of this can happen. Nothing will happen. The things that I believe can never ever happen.
His lyrics are still dark and self-reflective, but there is hope and a sense of optimism in there. I feel like this song is Miller's choir of assholes in a way, with him understanding most of his struggles and the pain that comes with them. But that knowledge also comes with a liberating sense of freedom. Even if it's fleeting, it's still comforting, and sometimes every bit of that can help and make life easier to an extent. Headboard communicates these emotions effectively, and even as a rather straightforward listen, I can't help but love it for its brevity and vibe. Birth of a New Day is a dream punk essential, and if you care about ambient music, you should give it a spin if you haven't already. 2814 is the moniker of HKE E and Telepath, who have been pivotal in paving the way for the vaporwave subgenre known as dream punk. If you are not familiar with it, it's essentially a sample and field recording heavy subgenre of electronic music that is rather cinematic and has elements of vaporwave to it. It is also often associated with cyberpunk because the imagery and vibe of the songs often focus on creating the sound of future megacities or like strange dystopian settings that are also beautiful in their own twisted ways. 2814 is essentially the first known piece in the puzzle, who cut their teeth with a self-titled debut that I like a lot, but compared to that, Birth of a New Day is superior in every way. It serves as the duo's masterpiece. This is where I'm just going to point out how every album that is connected to a track off this list is great, and you should go beyond these songs if you can. I only pick songs because they're easier to get into if you're just out there hustling and somehow don't have the dedication to find full lengths, and I ain't judging, check them out if you can. I picked the song Shinjuku Golden Street, which is an almost 9-minute big boy with drawn-out, delayed, atmospheric synth patches that just cry over each other. The drums sound like small lo-fi stones that echo upon hitting some sort of wall. The slow, pulsing synth melody that gradually blossoms into this mysterious lead is probably my favorite element of the song. It just feels like I'm cruising in the rain in some sort of dystopian city on some high-tech train under which the rocks are making these thud sounds. I love it. I zone out to this whole album a lot, and it accompanies my moments gazing out the window on rainy nights with a serene and calm atmosphere. I also feel like it encapsulates a strange feeling of detachment and loneliness as well, being stuck somewhere that on the surface looks colorful and inviting, but when you're truly alone there, it just becomes unbearable. However, it does so in a way that's not suffocatingly depressing, but melancholic in general. Have a swig of this if you're one of those melancholics. Guess what, bucko, I didn't notice. Shout out to Mr. Grimbeard. Most of you probably already know him, but if for some reason you don't, he makes banger videos and music as well, and I figured I would like to tie this playlist together with a few more instrumentals that still fit the mood, still have the vibe. They Won't Notice is a rather minimal track that I listen to when I go for a walk during the evening, and it proved to be an excellent company throughout quarantine as well, even now actually. When I would just like to peer outside my 7-story dorm room's window, this is on. If I'm walking somewhere, this is on. It's calming, it's beautiful. It's an awesome backdrop for everything. Looking at traffic or just trying to come to terms with anxious thoughts. The muffled kicks in the background are there for you as a little hand-holding, as the quiet synth bass covers you warmly, waiting for that really catchy melody that's been stuck in my head for way too long now. It's the perfect thinking track, and what I need is a 10-hour version of it. Also, it's not on YouTube, so the actual playlist I put together is gonna include another song by the man that has a similar vibe, because I can just do that, for fuck's sake. Obscenely long album title that I've gotten to know by heart throughout nightly car drives during quarantine curfews, baby. No matter how wet with tears the palms become, all our hopes will turn into black sludge, is the debut full-length album of Mexican dream punk producer, if you're watching this, sorry for butchering your name, Mutilomaquia, and it's a wonderful collage of soundscapes and vibes. Lots of steamy electronic jabs skittering throughout the mix, while mysterious, distorted and delayed melodies are swinging at you from all directions. It's a great dream punk ambient album that utilizes a lot of neat samples. The track in question is the second cut of the album, called To Live With It. Oh, live with it. Everything I just said to describe the album fits this song wonderfully. A strange, mysterious atmosphere covers the entire record, and this song feels like I'm walking through a swamp in an alien world where every living thing is some sort of wire or machine. It's a weird collage of nature and electronic that I guess the first track encapsulates a bit better, but this one got me hooked with its distorted synth patches that occasionally sound like mutant birds in the night. At least in my head, but not in a scary sense. You feel more like an explorer who's all safe and sound. Again, the whole album hits the same vibe, and you should definitely check it out as like one complete listen. The track in question is one of my favorites, alongside You Tell Yourself It's Okay, with the latter being more subdued and reserved. I'm thinking right now type stuff, you know what I mean. I spent literal weeks driving to a frozen lake next to a resort village that's completely dead during the winter. Like, you would have these street lights that are the only thing letting you know that sometimes there are actual people here. And this album was always on when I was sitting by the lake, or when I was traversing through the forest. This was really always on, throughout the drive and my walks, as night slowly crept in, reminding me that it's time to go back to a world that is in the process of burning up or something. This was the winter of 2020, so it just felt like a piece of media that just, I guess, offered a lot of comfort during these times. And just for that, it is a favorite of mine. Described on Bandcamp as a gloom prince, rather fittingly, Tom Wasluck has been a pivotal member of US DIY circles for quite a while now, touring his moody, gloomy solo project Planning for Burial, which is actually one of my favorites from the Flancer catalog. Wasluck's ability to create beautifully atmospheric, genre-defying music with influences of shoegaze, post-metal, drone, and even some tape music shenanigans is outstanding. The terms doomgaze or gloomgaze fit rather perfectly and are a lot more descriptive than one would expect. He has been consistently putting out material since 2009. His debut album, Leaving, is a melancholic menagerie of sound showcasing both acoustic and electronic instrumentation, with a thick blanket of sadness that we can call the production on that album. It fits the lyrics about regret, love gone wrong, and depression perfectly, as the drawn-out, sad but crushing sound of the record washes over you like a river of tears and pain. Great album, check it out. However, today I'm recommending you something off of Tom's catchiest album, I suppose. Probably the most well-known song of his, which I think makes it a good stepping stone into his catalog. On Below the House, he continues to fine-tune and tinker with his sound, perfecting it, and I think it results in some of his best work yet. Every song on this album is wonderful, and it was horribly difficult to pick Warmth of You over something like Threadbare, Somewhere in the Evening, or even the reserved but beautiful Something. I ended up with this one as it's one of the best examples of the quiet-loud dynamic at play in Planning for Burial's music, while being catchy and... I'm just trying to find more ways to say beautiful, so I won't end up sounding like a dumb cop-out. It's a pretty song. The lyrics are again based on regret, a longing for someone important, presumably a significant other. The relationship with whom has deteriorated through distance. Emotional, physical, maybe both. Tom's poetry is minimal in general, but what I love about him is how much emotion he's able to convey through these relatively simple verses. The whole album is a reflection on a love lost, of which letting go is the only answer, but the procedure is just horribly difficult. It's a tear-stained, crying, wailing collection of moods that will always comfort me with its relatability, I think. As I said, relatable, pretty, but also painful and sometimes tear-jerking. Luis Vasquez. Dude, his music came into my life at a point where I thought I couldn't get any worse, and oh boy, it got a million times worse, baby. That being said, The Soft Moon has been on constant rotation ever since I heard the song Wasting in a Discord call. Huge thank you to my man Mr. Turtz for making that possible. I fell in love with this song so much that I started binge listening to the entire album it came off of, Deeper. It's a cinematic, gothed up post-punk album with elements of industrial sprinkled in with lyrics related to Vasquez fighting his demons, showcasing a strong sense of dissatisfaction with his life, while also trying to internalize what it takes to fix himself, but still not being prepared to take the steps required. This album made his struggles hit closer to home. Before it, his lyrics were a bit more abstract and unspecific. As much as I love Wasting and Deeper, I feel like that's the first thing you'll stumble upon when you're googling the man's work, so it's unavoidable to an extent. The song and the album, they kinda cast their shadows over everything he has made. Not to downplay his musical chops though, because I don't think he made an album I don't consider great. Wasting is rightfully loved. It's a great song, but I'm gonna try and give you something that's more straightforward post-punk actually, with a hint of shoegaze. When It's Over is off his self-titled Capture Tracks debut, and damn! It's a simple number with echoey, hard-hitting drums, a catchy melancholic guitar melody, and Vasquez's voice just serving as a comforting cloud of sound. His whimpery screams remain in the background and his pitch-shifted vocals become used as ambient pads essentially. The same practice he'll pull on Wasting 5 years later. It's a dense and moody song that gradually turns into a dissonant wall of sound with busy, detuned, phasered guitars, and also a subtle bass line and shrieking blaring synths in the end before the track fades out into a void full of silence, instantly turning me towards the replay button. Lyrically, there isn't all that much going on with Vasquez singing about the world ending, which is complemented wonderfully through the slowly distorting chaotic melody of it. I'm also putting Wasting on the list as well for the curious bunch, but to the end of the playlist because you gotta save the best for last. His whole catalog is great, chock full of introspecting gothy jams, and I can recommend every album of his. Maybe don't start with Zeros though. Also the man wrote a soundtrack for a movie that doesn't exist, because that thing, Body of Errors, that thing could be a Cronenberg film soundtrack, dude. Oh, that was wonderful. Good times were had. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you got something new out of this one. For every release associated with the tracks listed, I put a Bandcamp link in the description so you could support something new you like. If there wasn't anything new for you in this one, I'm sorry. I'm just a man who has an incredibly shallow taste in music, but still can't shut my fucking mouth. We're gonna go a bit deeper next time, okay? Thank you again. I'm still alive. I'm doing better. I'm working on shit. Life is just, it's just complicated.